Hello, my name is Kara. This presentation is in partial fulfillment of Nursing 676, Theoretical Mental Health Models for Colorado State University, Pueblo, with Dr. Heidi Gerber, and I began this presentation on February 6, 2026. It is currently February 20th, 2026, and I'll be talking to you about Viktor Frankl, who created the theory of logotherapy. So, Viktor Frankl was born into a Jewish family as the middle child in Vienna in 1905. In 1914 to 1918, their family underwent intense poverty from war times. He showed a psychology interest in high school, and he was really interested in Freud and Adler. At age 15, he gave his first lecture on the meaning of life. He began his medical practice at age 25 and became a professor for neurology and psychiatry. In 1930, he became the director of neurology at Rothschild Hospital. Unfortunately, at age 37, he and his family, including his parents and his wife, were all deported to a Nazi concentration camp, and he spent 4 years there. Upon liberation, he was made chief doctor of a military hospital for displaced persons, where he tried to find his wife and learned of her death that she demised to within the camps. So he created the theory of logotherapy. He already had outlines of this theory prior to his deportation, and his unfinished works were confiscated before he entered into the death camps. However, throughout his experience in the concentration camp, he put logotherapy to the test and ultimately finished his theory after he was liberated. So he ended up reconstructing his unfinished work, Ausländische Seelsorge, with an added chapter on the psychology of the concentration camps. I came across this quote that I found inspiring. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. So, logotherapy was developed by Viktor Frankl in early 20th century Vienna. He emerged alongside of Freud and Adler. Freud had the concept of a will to pleasure. Adler had a concept of a will to power. And this led Frankl into developing the concept of a will to meaning. He was heavily influenced by European existential philosophy, which included freedom, responsibility, and meaning and suffering. It was shaped by post-World War I instability, nihilism, and a loss of traditional values. And it was further impacted by World War II and the Holocaust. He observed that meaning supports psychological survival. Logotherapy has 3 major concepts: the freedom of will, the will to meaning, and the meaning of life. The freedom of will proposes that humans are free to choose their response to life and are personally responsible for their choices. The will to meaning proposes that humans are motivated to find meaning, and when this search is hindered, there is an experience of existential frustration and feelings of meaninglessness. And the meaning of life proposes that individuals are called moment to moment to answer the demands of life. The focus is on what responsibility there is to give life rather than feelings of what one deserves from life. Logotherapy has 3 major ways that one can experience finding meaning. So one is in the state of creation, so creating a work or doing a deed. This is essentially what we put out into the world. The second one is experiences, which include goodness, truth, beauty, nature, culture, being loved. This is essentially what we take from the world. And Frankl proposes that to love and be loved is one of the greatest ways that we can savor this experience. The third is attitudes, and this is essentially how we view the world. Logotherapy techniques include 3 major ones. These are referenced as de-reflection, paradoxical intention, and Socratic dialogue. De-reflection is when you have the client step back and reflect on their own circumstances. This helps to put things in perspective for them. The second is paradoxical intention. This directs the client to give excessive attention or hyper-intention to try and bring about what is most feared. The idea is with self-distancing and humorous exaggeration, one cannot be both anxious and intentional simultaneously. And the third technique is Socratic dialogue. This is a conversational questioning method that is used to raise awareness to one's unrealistic and counterproductive attitudes. So essentially, the therapist will guide the client into a new outlook that provides a more fulfilling and meaningful life without imposing their own values onto the client. Application of logotherapy. So how the theory explains behavior is humans are motivated by a will to meaning. Behavior reflects the search for purpose, values, and direction. Psychological distress arises from an existential vacuum. This essentially is a lack of meaning. Individuals have freedom to choose their attitudes even in suffering. Therapy focuses on discovering meaning and personal responsibility of the client. Ways that logotherapy contributes to research. Research links meaning in life to decreased depression and anxiety and an increased feeling of resilience. Logotherapy is used in studies on trauma, addiction, grief, and palliative care. It is influential in positive psychology, and evidence base is growing, but it is less than CBT at this point, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. Logotherapy and treatment looks like planning. So logotherapy primarily is used in treatment planning rather than defining personality traits. However, it does describe personality in terms of the search for meaning. Freedom of choice, personal responsibility, and this is particularly effective for depression, existential crises, grief and trauma, terminal illness and loss of purpose. This looks like providing those 3 techniques that we spoke about earlier, which is Socratic dialogue, de-reflection, and paradoxical intention. And logotherapy and treatment is influential in existential therapy and positive psychology. There are some criticisms that come with logotherapy. There is criticism that the concepts are abstract and less structured than trait-based models, which is seen as a huge limitation. Existential psychologist Rollo May did state that logotherapy closely resembled authoritarianism because the therapist dictated solutions to the clients. However, Frankl did counter this argument, and he stated that logotherapy actually teaches the client to be responsible. There are accusations that propose Frankl used his time in the Nazi concentration camps to advance his specific theory of psychotherapy. However, there has been nothing that aligns with that truth. This is merely speculation and rumored. And the other criticism is that logotherapy is mostly and widely accepted and supported by religious affiliations over the support of the scientific community. This seems to be a thought that invalidates the theory, since it is so applicable to religious teaching and religious law. In conclusion, logotherapy is a scientifically based school of psychotherapy that proposes the search for meaning, even through misery, can credit a solution to human suffering. It is used in modern society for purposes such as addiction, pain, guilt, anxiety, and depression. Meaning is found by creating love or adopting a modified attitude towards suffering, which is inevitable as we live in this life. And the 3 techniques used in logotherapy include dereflection, paradoxical intention, and Socratic dialogue. Some of Viktor Frankl's most popular books include Man's Search for Meaning, The Will to Meaning, Yes to Life in Spite of Everything, and The Doctor and the Soul. Viktor Frankl has published other books, but these are most notably his most popular and his most attentive works describing what logotherapy is and kind of applying it. So this is a clip of an interview I found with Viktor Frankl. It's just a few minutes, and unfortunately I cannot get the video to play as I present. However, I will have the audio here. And one quote that I found from Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, is, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." I thought this was pretty inspiring given all that he has been through. And so without further ado, I'm going to play the quick clip that I found pretty interesting in this interview.
For meaning are useless. Man cannot be healthy without meaning, without meaning beckoning him. He could not even remain alive. You know who has said this? Albert Einstein. No psychiatrist. Right. And now I think psychiatry should be reminded of this primary motivational force in man. That man is primarily and basically reaching out for meaning. And man must be prepared to endure the tension between the meaning which is in wait for him and the being, the actual being, the actual state of affairs. This gap between what he is and what he should become, what he ought to be, this gap must be endured. And so I would, you certainly want to remind me that the homeostasis principle is prevalent, prevailing and dominating present-day psychology. That man is a being which just wants to satisfy his drive, to gratify his desire, to fulfill the need, to follow his drive. This, I believe, is not the actual truth. I think that man is no being in steady quest for maintaining or restoring his inner equilibrium, and for this purpose, satisfying needs and drives. Man is primarily a being reaching out for meaning, and this.
Okay, that was the video clip that I found pretty interesting in his interview. And the last slide, here are my references that I found. Thank you for listening and being attentive to my presentation. Till next time.